Hey, do you want to know a secret? There are no secrets. But in the world of YouTube and real estate investing and online social media where there's a lot of hype, secrets sell. It's easier to get people to click on something if it's a secret technique that nobody knows really, and I'll just share everything about it with you. But the truth is, in any business and any real estate investing career, there are a set of fundamentals that if you learn those fundamentals, if you practice them, if you get good at them, it's going to lead to you being successful. You're going to build wealth, you're going to buy properties, you're going to produce income. So in this video, I like to share with you what I've found over the last 18 years have been the fundamentals, the things that really lead to success as a real estate investor. We're going to get started right now. Welcome to Coach Carson TV. My name is Chad Carson. You can also call me Coach. And this is a channel all about investing in real estate, achieving financial independence, and doing more of what matters. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss anything. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. It'll help us to spread the word to more people on YouTube. I've always loved the world of sports. I used to play football. I got a college football scholarship, and I love basketball, and I play pickup basketball on the side. And the world of sports really teaches us a lot about business, about investing. And one of those main lessons is that fundamentals matter. That if you get into sports and you try to have some tricky new technique or fancy thing, that the person who has the better fundamentals is going to beat you every time over the long run. One of my favorite sports coaches is John Wooden. He was a Hall of Fame basketball coach who won lots and lots of national championships in a row. And every year at the beginning of his sports season, he would take his players into the locker room and he'd teach them how to put on their socks and how to tie their shoes. Can you believe that? Here's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, these Hall of Fame players, and they're learning to tie their shoes and put their socks on. But the point he made to them was, we're gonna focus on the little things, the fundamentals, and they're gonna get good at dribbling and passing and shooting. And the best coaches today are the same way. You look at the Alabama coach, Nick Saban, and they focus on a thing called the process, where they focus on just get the process right, the fundamentals, and the wins will take care of themselves. So let's jump right into what I see as the process, or the 7 fundamentals of real estate investing that you need to learn and get good at. Real estate investing fundamental number 1 is understanding markets and value. Real estate investing really at its core is a market. It's people who buy and sell it, people who rent it or lease it. And so if you understand how those function and why they function the way they do, you can make a lot more money. On the big picture level, real estate investing prices grow over time because of some fundamentals like population growth. If you have population growth, if you're in a region of the country where people are tending to move in, prices of real estate tend to go up as well, and the demand for the real estate and everything else that kind of drives the fundamentals of your real estate investing business. So population growth is a really important factor you want to look at on the big picture, in addition to jobs and income. So somebody has to buy your real estate, somebody has to rent your real estate. So in general, you want to pick locations of the country or the world to invest in where jobs and population growth look like they're moving up. And on the other side, if they look like you're in an area that jobs are moving out, you obviously want to be careful of that, and it's going to be a little more difficult to make money in that falling market. So that's the big picture of markets. But if you kind of zoom in and you get within a region, you want to look for neighborhoods, you want to look for streets that are in high demand. And even better, if they're an area that formerly was not in demand, and now it's kind of transitioning into kind of a better location where people want to live, people want to rent, people want to buy. Those are some of the places you can make the most money. So big picture, kind of medium level, and then all the way down to the individual house, you really got to learn the fundamental of analyzing the value of a property. Can you figure out how to compare other properties that have sold in the market? That's called comparable sales analysis, to understand why this property was worth more, this property was worth less, and how yours might be right in between those two. That fundamental of analyzing the value of the property will help you buy and sell properties if you're flipping. It'll help you buy them below value if you're buying a rental property. And it'll also help you with a very similar technique of understanding what rent values are. Because everything else you do, if you can't know with confidence what that property's worth or what it rents for, it's going to be hard to make money any other place. Real estate investing fundamental number 2 is analyzing or running the numbers. Now, fundamental number 1, acknowledge that real estate is a very physical thing. It's a market, it's a property, it's the sticks and the bricks of real estate. But real estate investing is also about the numbers. That you can buy the most beautiful property, but if the numbers don't work, why would you buy it? So there's a lot of different ways you can look at the numbers of a property, but I look at a few different things when I'm analyzing the numbers. The first is, if you're buying a rental property in particular, is to look at the cash flow or the net income that property is going to produce. Because the basics of a rental property investment is that you buy a property by putting money into that investment and you expect to get some kind of cash flow or return back to you. And the sooner, the better. So if you can analyze what that property is going to produce after all of your expenses, what's left over, and does that meet your criteria, that's a really important figure to know. The second thing, and related to that, is a return on investment. So the first one shows you just how much, maybe it's $200 per month or $5,000 per year in cash flow that this property is producing. A return on investment shows you some kind of ratio, some kind of percentage, so that you can know and you can compare that to other investments and say, how much income is this property producing compared to this other property or this other investment. There's a lot of different formulas you can look at and analyze in real estate, things like cap rates, return on your asset, cash on cash return. So all of these are percentages, and there's different benefits to using one or the other, which I can't get into in too much detail in this video with the time constraints. But if you look at another video I have, and there'll be a link in the show description, the video description below, that how to run the numbers is a more in-depth video where I actually draw it out and show you some of the key formulas that I use when I run the numbers. So in addition to a cash flow and a return on investment analysis, I also like to look at my real estate investment over time. And if you could look at it over 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's a little bit more complicated because you have to go out into the future, but it's actually the most important because you're typically, especially as a buy and hold real estate investor, going to own a property over time. And sometimes what the property looks like today and the return on investment today isn't necessarily what your total investment is going to be over time. So this is another thing that you can look at a lot of different formulas. I like something called an internal rate of return. You also see it described as IRR, and there's some modified different ways to evaluate IRR. But look that up. I'm going to do some videos on that in the future, tutorial on how to run the IRR. But look it up on Wikipedia, look it up on Google and YouTube if it's something new to you. It's one of the fundamental ways to analyze a property and understand if it's a good investment over time. The third fundamental of real estate investing is financing. So most of the time when we buy a real estate property, we're spending a lot of money. And not all of us have enough money sitting in the bank to be able to go just write a check and pay cash for it. So most of the time we're going to use financing. We're going to go to the bank to get a loan, or maybe we're going to go to alternative, more creative sources like a self-directed IRA or a private lender or lease options, a lot of the things I've talked about here on this channel. But in any case, you've got to figure out some way to finance your purchase. So the better you get at understanding what the traditional sources of money are, what are the terms, what are the requirements, what is the bank looking for you to do to be able to get that loan, the better you get at that, and really understanding those terms and those requirements as well as the lender does. If you can get to that point, you'll have an advantage over other investors. In a similar vein, if you are into creative financing and try to work with the seller, work with private lenders, you've got to understand the technique. You've got to understand the fundamentals. How does that work? What paperwork do I need? How do I have a conversation with a private lender to ask them to loan me money? So that's an important fundamental, and the more confident you can get in asking for the money and in executing and following through once somebody loans you some money, the better you can be as a real estate investor. Real estate investing fundamental number 4 is finding good deals. If I had to describe this another way, this is really the world of marketing and negotiation. And marketing and negotiation are important in any business. And in real estate investing, though, one of the most difficult parts I've found for people that I've coached and helped to get started in real estate is the ability to find the deals, to generate leads from potential good deals, to sit down face to face with an agent or with a seller of a property and actually negotiate to buy a good deal. So that's a skill set, it's a fundamental that you can build up over time. And I remember when I first started real estate investing, I was a brand new green rookie who didn't know many of these fundamentals at all. I had to choose which one am I going to spend the most time learning about. And you obviously have to learn a little bit about everything, but what I did is I chose to focus on deal finding. I chose to become as good as I could at marketing. So I did a lot of direct mail. I did a lot of just kind of, they call it guerrilla marketing, where it's very low cost ways. I put signs on my car that I bought for $50. I went around and talked to agents and networked. I knocked on doors sometimes. I put flyers out at Walmart one time on people's cars, which I don't know if that was the best idea or not, but I did all sorts of things to generate leads, and I practiced, and I saw some things worked, some things didn't work, but I had the ability to have people calling me saying, hey, I would like to sell you my house. I would like to sell you my building. And that's a really big benefit. The other thing though is once they call, what do you say on the phone? How do you talk to them? How do you show up and meet with that agent or meet with that seller and negotiate with them and explain to them what you can do and why that might be a benefit to them? So that whole process is kind of like a sales funnel of generating leads, talking on the phone, meeting with people in person, making offers and following up. That entire sales business is an important fundamental and it's something you can practice, you can get better at if you want to be a good real estate investor. Real estate investing fundamental number 5 is remodeling and construction. Just about every good deal that I've bought as a real estate investor for the last 18 years has needed some kind of repair. And on the most basic level, it might be something like painting the walls or changing the flooring out like the carpet or the vinyl or the tile, or just doing some cleanup on the landscaping outside. Then on more extreme levels, it might need a total overhaul where you're basically ripping everything down to the wood framing and fixing the foundation and going back and putting new sheetrock and changing the layout. So anything in between could be possible. And so understanding how that process works, what things cost, and then how to manage a team of people to fix that up is really important. And I want to disclose up front that I am not handy at all. So me actually going in and swinging a hammer, putting up sheetrock, painting, doing all these things is not my skill set. The skill set, what I'm talking about here, is basically overseeing that process. And at a minimum, you need to be able to know if the experts who are going to do the work for you and give you bids are being realistic with you or not. And so one of the most important skills I have found is the ability to estimate remodel cost. And luckily there's a book that my friend Jay Scott published through Bigger Pockets called the book on estimating remodel cost. I'll have a link to that in the video description below. But so at a minimum, learn to be competent in evaluating the property, running the numbers, understanding what is a reasonable repair, what's not. Luckily, YouTube's awesome. You can look up all sorts of details here on YouTube, but build that skill of estimating remodel costs and understanding the process of how remodeling and construction work. Real estate investing fundamental number 6 is the skill set of landlording or property management. Now, whether you're gonna be somebody who self-manages your properties and does it all yourself or hires out a third-party manager, this skill set is about understanding the whole process or the life cycle of a tenant who's gonna move into your property. So you need to get good at being able to lease properties. So when they're vacant, get them turned over and find somebody else to move into them. To also understand the lease itself. So when you screen somebody and you have a screening process, how do you screen them? What kind of contract do you use in your state specifically? Every state has a little bit different nuance on their landlord-tenant laws. So the skill set involves understanding your landlord-tenant laws and then having a lease that is strong for you and that you understand that you can communicate with your tenants or your property manager can communicate with your tenants. So once you find the right people, you screen them, you have a good lease, you also have to be good at customer service. These are your customers. These are the people who are going to live in your properties and hopefully pay rent to you. And so having a good working relationship where you're adding value to them, where you're being better than the other landlords in town, where you're adding little extras, you're making it easy for your tenants. And if there is a maintenance problem, have a way for them to get in touch with you and so that you can solve it quickly by having a team of maintenance people or contractors who can help you fix that. And then at the end of the life cycle, when they're ready to move on, you get notice. How do you go from having a tenant there, turning over, making sure there's an inspection done, and you go all the way back to the beginning of the leasing process. So that entire process, I call it landlording, but it's also property management, and getting good at that will make you have good investments over the long run. Real estate investing fundamental number 7 is the whole world of contracts and the laws that affect us as real estate investors. Now, before we get into talking about some of the challenges of laws, I want to say it's a good thing. It's better than the alternative that we have rule of law, that we have contracts that we can depend on. If you go back to our primal days, caveman days, people used to get things done. If you didn't like what the other person said, you used a club. So rule of law is nice, that we can have these interactions, that we can have transactions where we have a document that we can agree on, or we have laws that kind of are the referee for how we do things in the world of business. With that said, there are some challenges to existing in that legal framework, and there's also some opportunities. So there's a few different things I want to mention. The first is having an attorney or attorneys on your team is a key here. I'm not an expert on all of these laws. Just like construction and maintenance, you hire contractors who are really good at this stuff and who are licensed, who know how to do it. You do the same thing with your legal team, but you need to understand it. You need to understand when you have a contract, you have a purchase and sale agreement, you have a lease or a rental agreement, when you have a promissory note or a mortgage. All of those are contracts which you are signing. And so understanding what that means and asking your attorney to explain that in layman's terms to you so that you understand the promises you're making, so that you understand the laws of your state, of the nation, how those affect you, that's a really important thing to know. So I will start with that, start with the contracts. But one of the opportunities I would say when you look locally at the laws in your local jurisdiction are the zoning laws and the development regulations. There are a lot of opportunities that investors miss because they don't understand the zoning. And I always have maps up in my office. I used to have a big zoning map of my area. I still look at it a pretty good bit, where I just stare at the map and understand how the zoning works. This area is zoned for multifamily. This area is zoned for single family. This area is very rare. It's zoned for mobile homes. What does that mean? And actually reading those regulations. It can be tedious. Reading legal stuff is very tedious. But if you get good at that skill set, if you understand your contracts, if you understand the regulations, the zoning, the other restrictions in your area, sometimes you can flip that around and you can make that an opportunity because you know about what you can't do and what you can do, and other people might not realize that. The other part of understanding the laws is just knowing the limits of what you can do, what's legal, what's not legal. That's where your attorneys and people on your team help you. So you don't want to do anything big. You don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. You don't want to start a business without letting other experts look over what you're doing and recommend to you where, what you can't do, what you can do. And if somebody says, just because they say, hey, you can't do that, ask the question, why not? What's the law? What's the regulation? Try to understand it. The other thing I'll say about laws is that you want to understand what the limits are, what's legal and what's illegal before you start doing business. So if you're a landlord and you're renting properties, understanding the landlord-tenant law, what you can do and what you can't do, and that differs from state to state, by the way. And when you borrow money or when you lend money or you do any other parts of real estate, this is where your legal team is important. But this is also where you have to understand how to ask good questions. If you go to somebody and you're trying a new technique and it has to do with a contract or something, and your attorney automatically says, no, you can't do that, that's illegal. Don't stop there. Ask, what is illegal about it? What law does it break? Why does it break it? You understand that. And sometimes you'll find, as I have found, not always, but sometimes, that they didn't understand it themselves, and so they said you can't do that. So when you challenge the expert who's on your team to explain it to you, to do their research, they might say, well, let me research that a little bit more, let me talk to my colleague, and you'll then have understood that a little bit better. And that's really what this is all about, is being a more knowledgeable investor, and knowledge is power. Knowledge is the ability to build wealth, because you might find one little angle, one little thing that you can do that other people didn't realize was possible. So those are what I see as the 7 fundamentals of real estate investing. If I were playing basketball, that's like the dribbling and the passing and the shooting and the conditioning of our sport called real estate. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Do any of those fundamentals resonate with you? Are those things that you practice? Did I miss any fundamentals? Are there other important parts of the business that we all need to learn and we need to focus on? Leave me a comment below. I would love to have a discussion with you. If you found this video helpful and my channel helpful in general, I'd always appreciate you clicking the like button. That lets YouTube know that you liked it and it shares it with other people. And share it around. Share it with your friends, your colleagues, your family members. That's really the biggest compliment you can pay me if you found this valuable for your time. I put it out there free, and so really the currency of the internet is to share it around with other people. If you'd like to explore any of those fundamentals that I went over today, obviously you could go in depth on a lot of those. That's a lot of what this channel is all about. In the description below, I've given some links where appropriate to other playlists, to other videos, to other books that I found helpful with each of those fundamentals. So I hope you check those out. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. You've been watching Coach Carson TV. My name is Chad Carson. You can also call me Coach, and this is a channel all about investing in real estate, achieving financial independence, and doing more of what matters. See you next time.